Yesterday there was a devil here. I smell the odor of sulfur that still soars here. Ladies and gentlemen, here was the US President George Bush, whom I call the Satan, and he spoke yesterday as if he owned all of the world. His speech should be analyzed by a psychiatrist.
The only president who made the sign of the cross in the UN Assembly Hall, whose speech was resembling an act of exorcism, and the delegates were still lucky because Hugo Chávez could easily supplement his speech with some singing, saber swinging, a baseball bat, or a guitar. There were a lot of flamboyant tricks in his arsenal, and they glorified him as one of the brightest rulers of Latin America countries. He is the only dictator who had his own radio and TV show. Every Sunday he talked to his audience televised live. He enjoyed public appearances. Moreover, El Presidente wanted to answer the reproaches of his opponents on his own. Private media relentlessly criticized his behavior and social initiatives. Caudillo was accused of usurpation, manipulations with constitutional changes, and unfair referendums just to stay in power. Trying not to look like a tyrant, Chávez closed only one TV channel, formally for the licensing violation. Besides, he decided to go on the air himself.
Hello everyone, it is a program Hello Mr. President.
He also set the world record for the longest presidential speech. One time he dragged out a live broadcast for 8 hours. With his public speaking talent, Chávez often went too far. In January 2012, on the annual address to the parliament, he was not able to leave the podium for practically 11 hours. God gave Venezuela rich oil deposits. The black gold export bring up to 80% of revenues to the local economy. In the 1970s, the golden years started. After OPEC countries froze oil sales in the United States, Caracas suppliers came to take their place. Although Venezuela was jokingly called Saudi, it did not use the chance to jump out of the third world rating. Oil money was deposited in the pockets of individual businessmen and not invested in the country's economy. By the end of 1990s, the society was highly polarized. Oligarchs in the industry reaped their rewards, while the average Venezuelans mostly lived in poverty. People were also discriminated because of their origin. Representatives of big business were mostly Creoles or white, while the poor were often descendants of Native American people. In the late 1990s, Venezuela was experiencing an economic crisis that had to be overcome with unpopular reforms. The citizens were forced to tighten their belts because of a new taxation system offered in exchange for loans from international organizations. The combinations of these factors caused a wave that brought Hugo Chávez's Fifth Republic movement to victory during the elections. However, before that he had spent 2 years behind the bars for an attempted coup.
My friends, I regret to inform you that we were not able to achieve our goal. We could not take power in Caracas to continue the Bolivarian revolution. I assume full responsibility for our failure.
After an early release, he created a party with which he won the election in 1999. People were tricked by the fervent speeches of a former paratrooper who promised to fight for all good against all evil. Indians also liked him because of the use of red color in party's political symbols. His Indian origin, the fact that his great-grandfather was a rebel himself, and revolutionary ideas presented under the crimson flags also played their role. Chávez founded Fifth Republic movement, which he called Bolivarian in honor of Simon Bolivar, who fought for the independence of South America from Spain. The main defect of his rule was the oppression and freedom of speech restriction. However, he did not destroy the opposition and won the election without obvious violations. It was acknowledged by international observers. The Venezuelans did not care much about the freedom of speech because they had to worry how to support their families. These sentiments were confirmed by the coup. In 2002, Chávez's regime was nearly overthrown with the help of the military.
The country needs changes. We believe President Chávez should leave post and flee the country.
But after 2 days, the generals backed down, fearing mass protests in favor of Chávez that began across the country, and El Comandante returned. Now his policies became tougher, and the role of the main enemy was given to the United States. Caudillo had reason to accuse the CIA of supporting the putschists. Moreover, Washington was the first to recognize Carmona Estanga as a new president. Out of spite, El Presidente strengthened his ties with Cuba. In exchange for oil, Havana sent 10,000 doctors to Venezuela to work in the most remote and poor areas of the country. Of course, Chávez couldn't resist a good show, so together with Fidel Castro, he staged a magnificent baseball game. Friendship with the Cuban communists was only the first challenge for the United States. Caracas began to gather support around the world and consolidate everyone who had something against the White House: Iran, Libya, Palestine, DPRK, Belarus, and Russia. Petrodollars were poured into all the projects that agreed with Chávez's main slogan.
And I say to you, burn in hell, stupid Yankees.
It seemed like George Bush became Chávez's personal enemy. After the beginning of the US military operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, El Presidente flew off the handle.
You are ignorant and you are a donkey. Or I better tell it to you in my bad English. You are a donkey, George Bush. You are covered. A murderer, an alcoholic, and a liar. An immoral person. You are Mr. Danger. You are the worst person on this planet. You are mentally ill. I know it.
Words are just words, but business is business. And with all the blatant hatred towards America, the United States was the largest importer of Venezuelan oil. Or putting it simply, Hugo Chávez sold most of the oil to the damn Yankees. Political opponents often accused El Comandante of ignorance. Chávez did unspeakable things. He called George W. Bush a drunkard and ex-Prime Minister of Great Britain an imperialist pawn. He even sang a song about Hillary Clinton, who accused him of avoiding a dialogue with the states.
Hillary Clinton doesn't like me, but I don't like her as well.
His quarrel during the Ibero-American Summit in 2007 has become legendary. Spanish Prime Minister Zapatero suggested that El Comandante should be more diplomatic and stop interrupting everyone. When Chávez ignored this remark, Spanish king himself tried to calm the Indian down.
Stop it and shut your mouth.
However, Caudillo did not plan to stop. The time of monarchy has passed, shouted El Comandante, this time ranting at London.
The Queen of England, I'm talking to you. The Queen of England, there are no empires anymore. The Queen of England, don't you understand that? Return the Maldives to the people of Argentina, the Queen of England.
His rude style was a way of dissociating himself from the world establishment and earning points by telling the Americans and their allies are those to blame for all the misfortune. That's how he explained the country's internal problems. When everyone got used to his public on-air defamations, El Presidente came up with new original ways to show himself in a positive light for all the lumpens. At one of the Latin American summits, he spoke in defense of Bolivian farmers. For this, he received some coca leaves from President Morales, to the applause.
My friend, I knew you wouldn't let me down. I've just finished my stash. Capitalism and the international mafia turned it into cocaine. But coca is not cocaine.
Among Chávez's transoceanic friends were Iran and Belarus. He and Ahmadinejad even planned to develop nuclear weapons.
We will create a bomb together. With weapons, our countries will no longer be ignored by these Washington jerks.
When Alexander Lukashenko gave Chávez a ride on a tractor, Caracas bought a huge batch of machinery from Minsk and signed golden contracts with Belarusian builders. They are still erecting cheap social housing for Venezuelans.
He kept asking when he'll see his friend Hugo.
Oh, my little boy Nikolai, high five. Okay.
Hugo Chávez's personal idol was Simon Bolivar. His saber, the espada, one of the main symbols of the Bolivarian Revolution, gained magical symbolism in the hands of Chávez. He handed a copy of the blade to Gaddafi, and the Jamahiriya fell. The next saber was gifted to the Syrian tyrant Assad, and next thing, he had to face a war and lose power as a result. Chávez also gifted a diamond-encrusted espada to Putin, but apparently the Kremlin noticed a disturbing pattern and decided to return the gift in a couple of years.
This is an extremely valuable gift, but we would like to return it to Venezuela.
Spatial celebrities were meant to clear the reputation of the ignorant sponsor of terrorism. Yesterday's stars and those who are hungry for money, El Comandante was particularly pleased when anti-American slogans were heard from the Americans. Among the glamorous stars who came to Caracas was Naomi Campbell. Sean Penn also performed on the stage with Cordelio.
America has no right to dictate how you should live here in Venezuela.
And this is a hug with the king of football, Maradona.
I'm so happy to be here with you and your great leader Hugo Chávez.
The whole film about the great liberator was shot by Oliver Stone, the same Hollywood demiurge that was trusted to make deceptive films about Fidel Castro and Putin.
He is a strong politician and can resist the system well. He can liberate the whole region, we may even say the whole continent, from the IMF and economic dependence on the US.
The Hugo Chávez era was cut short by cancer. Of course, he blamed the CIA, saying that the Americans infect the inconvenient leaders of Latin America with oncological diseases. Argentinian President Fernández de Kirchner and Brazil's presidents Lula da Silva and Dilma Rousseff were also diagnosed with cancer. Chávez was treated in Cuba, but the disease took its toll in 2013. Farewell Parade was the most crowded event in Venezuela's contemporary history. And the oddities associated with the figure of liberator continued even after his death. Universities have introduced a new subject to study his ideas, and some are even suggesting to clone Hugo Chávez with the help of his DNA. The image of Red Cordelio still remains an indispensable idol and symbol of a new struggle for many Venezuelans.